Hello friends and welcome back to Study Tonight. In this video, we'll talk about a second way of, approaching form handling in React.js. So in the last video, if you've seen the last video, we covered, the simplest way or the easiest way to do form handling in React.js application. Yes, I, covered how you can directly add an event handler on the submit event of the form. And in one go, you can pick all the field values, all the input field values from the form and combine them together into an object and then use them as you want to, maybe for validation, maybe for sending to the backend, for processing, etc. In this video, what we will be doing is we will be adding event handlers on each of the single fields. So as the user is typing in some values, let's say we have a form like you can see on the screen. So we have a form with full name field and an email field and a gender field. We can have other fields as well. So as the user types in the values over here, we will grab the value from this field. And if we want to do some processing, we can do that. Or if we want to display the value over here, we can do that. Similarly for email field and for gender field. And once all those fields are collected together, we will be creating a form object, form data object. And when the user clicks on submit button, we can again, do whatever we want to do. Maybe, send the request to the backend for processing or, whatever your application requires. So this is a different approach. In this approach, we will be also using state variable to store the values that the user provide in this particular form. So this is a slightly different approach. And I wanted to cover both the approaches, the first one, which I covered in the last video, and this one, so that you get an understanding of how, in different ways you can handle a form. So let's get started. So as you can see on the screen, I already have created a simple form. We have a form tag over here, inside which I have multiple div tags. In each div, I have one single field. So we have the label full name, then we have a simple input type text for this one. Then I have an email field, input type email, and then I have a gender, which has input type radio. The name of the radio button field is gender for both. So it works perfectly fine. Now what we will do is we'll start with capturing the values that the user provides in these input fields. How we can do that? We can have the onChange event handler supply a function to it, and inside that function we can easily get access to the value that the user provides in the input field. Now that function will be triggered again and again as the value changes. So for example, if a user is typing in some value, it will be triggered with each click of the keyboard, right? So let's see how we can do that. So I've added an onChange event handler over here. So we'll add for the full name field first, and then we'll see how we can add different event handlers, or maybe, use the same event handler for all the fields, right? So let's have handle form field, right? So I'll give it a generic name because I plan on using the same event handler for all these input fields. Yes, because I don't want to have an onChange event handler, a different onChange event function for each of the fields, because that will be, writing too much code. I want to use one single function for each of the fields. So let's see how we can do that, right? So we have a handle form field function over here. I'll have to create this function. Let's quickly create this function. Handle form field is equal to add a function style. And as you must have seen in my previous videos as well, we get a event argument value over here, using which we can access the entire field, which is this field. Whichever field is involved, in the event handling, so we get access to that. So how we can get, let's create a variable val. Inside of this, I can get the value. So event.target will give me access to this input field, and using the dot value property, I can get the value. So let's console.log it and see if we are getting the value correctly or not, right? So if I will put over here, so as you can see, as I was typing in the value, each time this function was getting triggered, A, B, H, I typed in my name and this function got triggered 8 times. And I got value. So as the user moves out of this, now the last value that this variable will have is the complete name Abhishek. So that's how we can capture the value from any input field when the value changes. Now let's see if we can use the same function, same event handler for email field as well. I think this is the same similar input field. So this should work perfectly fine. Let me just remove this and let me add the email address. Yes, I'm getting all the values. So as we are typing in the value, it's again changing, and eventually I have the entire email address. Now let's see if we can use it on the input type radio field as well. I think we can use it. So we'll have to supply it to both the fields. Let me clean this console and let's see female on. Okay. So here, because the value, we haven't specified any value attribute. So for each of these clicks, we are just getting on as the result. So we have used the value attribute over here. So let's add the value attribute in this field, in these radio fields. Let me just, minimize this and increase the size of this. Yeah. So we'll give male to this all small, and for the female in radio button, we'll give female. Okay. Now let's see if we are getting the correct result. Yes. So now as you can see, I'm clicking on female, I get female. If I clicking on male, I get male. So I think that's what we were supposed to do. So this onChange event handler is working fine for all the input types. We don't have any other input field, but I think for checkbox and everything else also this will work. Let's try one quickly. So if I have to create a div inside which I want to create a select field, let's say. Let's have some option added to it. Select country. Okay, so I've created a select, and on this select also I'll apply this onChange handle form field. I think this should work for this as well. So if I click on India, I'm getting India. If I'm clicking on outside India, I'm getting outside India. Now this is just the text value that we have displayed in the options. We can also have a proper value like this. So we can have empty value for this one. For this, we can have India. For this, we can have outside. Okay. So we have used single word value to represent all these. Now let's see if this is working. Yes. Now we are getting small India and outside. So as you can see, we created just a single handle form function. We had just 2 lines of code. And we're able to handle values from each of the fields. Now, you would say that why would we go for this particular approach? Why don't, just have directly an event handler over here on submit click, I'm getting all the values. So you can follow that approach as well. In that approach, one problem is that you get all the values together. So you will have to either do the processing once the user clicks on the submit button. But in the modern applications, what happens is as the user is typing in the input in any particular field, some validations are run at the backend, and messages are displayed then and there. For example, someone is inputting a username, and if that username is not available. So as soon as the user, moves out of that particular field, it is immediately processed and displayed that, okay, this username is not available, please choose another username. Or maybe, some input that the user has provided is incorrect. So the message is immediately displayed that, okay, this particular message is not correct. So those cases can be handled using this approach, where you have an onChange event handler on each of the field. And as the user is typing in the values, providing the input, you are immediately capturing those values and maybe, do some processing on it. So let's, do a bit more with this. So what I'll do is I'll create a state, and in the state, we will store the value that we get in the form. So you must be thinking why I am using a state, why I'm storing these values in state. So for example, if you have some situation where you have a form, and as the user is typing in the value, you want to display those values below on the user interface. So that can be achieved using states. So I wanted to cover that also. So we are handling each input field's value as the user types in those values, and we'll set those in state so that we can display the values below, right? So that's also, a great way to sort of, understand how form handling can be done in different ways. So let's just remove this input field. I don't want to make the code very lengthy. So we have 3 fields now, okay? And let's create a state. So I hope you remember how we create a state. Let's have form fields state variable. we'll have a set function, set form fields, and we'll use the use state hook. We have this is automatically got imported over here. Inside of this, what I want to create is I want to keep an object to store all the values together, right? So as you can see over here, so this was the initial code, right? Over here we provide the value. We can provide 0, we can provide true, a boolean value, or we can provide in a string. Similarly, we can also create an object. So I'm using curly brackets to create an object. What I'll do is I will use the same names of the input fields. Okay, so we have not provided any name to the input fields. So let's quickly do that. Name is equal to name because this is a name field. Name is equal to email. And here we have already name, gender. Okay, cool. So what we will do is we'll have similar fields and I'll provide empty values for it. Name, email, and gender. Okay. So now we have created a state variable form fields which will have an initial value of an object. The object will have 3 properties, name, email, gender, and the value for them will be empty for now. So let's print this on the user interface also. Let's create a div over here. A paragraph name is, so I'll access the value of the state variables object. This is the state variable form fields. And here I'll use the dot operator to access the name. Similarly, I'll have other values as well. So we have email and we have gender. Here also we'll access email property, form fields.email and form fields.gender. So now let's see how our UI looks like. So right now there are no values. So this is appearing empty. This is fine. We don't have any problem with that. So let's now complete the code for this handle form field function. So over here, we are already getting access to the value. We have seen, we have logged this value. Let's get the name attribute also of this particular field because this is directly related to this object's field and we will directly, push in the values. So how we can get this name attribute? Again, similarly, event.target.name and we can easily get the name. We can also get the type of the field. So for example, here the type is the type is text, the type is email, the type is radio. So you can also get the type value. Maybe, you want to do some processing and this is how you can get the type attribute as well. So it's super easy to, access different attributes of the field on event onChange. So let's not go there. Now to set the value to this state variable, we'll have to use the set form fields function, right? And because I've covered this multiple times, I've covered this in the video where I talked about how arrays can be used in state and how you can update and add and delete values from that. We have also seen simple variables used in state. So we know how we can do that. In set form fields, we will be creating a new object because this is an object. We'll have to create the entire object again with existing values and the new value added to it. So this will be a little tricky, but let's see how we can do it. So we'll have the form fields state variable and we'll equate it, we'll set it to. So we will be using the destructuring operator. I have covered this in the video where I talked about how you can use array in state. So this destructuring operator we use with arrays as well. And we can simply provide in the new key value pair that we want to add or the existing key value pair that we want to update. So this name value, this name variable will have the name field. This will have name value or email value or gender, right? So we can simply use this name because this will act as a key. We have the key name, email, gender. We have name, email, and gender coming in from here, right? So we can also name it as key for, making it less confusing. So I can simply use key over here and provide it the value that we are getting from here, right? From here, sorry. So let's see if this works or not. Because this should, whenever for example, I'm changing the full name, this should update the value over here and we should be seeing the value over here. Now there's one catch, but let's first try. As you can see, we are getting an error and it's saying assignment to constant variables. So we know that the state variable is a constant that we have created over here. And we cannot directly change values for that. So how are we supposed to do this? Now, one way can be, let's try this style where we are not assigning it, but we are providing a new object which has the existing form fields and we're adding the new form field. And we're directly using the set form fields setter function to set the value. Let's see if this works for us or not. So I'll put in Abhishek, and yes, this works for us. So that's how we do not use the is equal to operator to assign it. We assign completely new value to the setter function as an argument, and then it will use that new value to, to replace the existing value of the form fields or any state variable that we have. Okay. So this is working for this. Let's see if this is working for this one as well. Yes, this is working for this as well. The state is getting updated, male, female. Hooray. So we are able to do it. Now what we have done over here is, what we have achieved over here is, we have set onChange event handler for each of the form fields, provided a function which will handle all those fields. In this handle form field function, we are capturing the value and we are setting it to an object which we are using as a state variable. And we are using the state variable to showcase the values on the user interface as well as the user is typing in. Right. Now you can try this code and you can also try to, have some validations over here, some error handling, maybe, create another state variable, let's say error message, set error message, and you can have it like this. So I'm just, sharing some ideas with you, right? So we have this error message, we can have, let's say show, and by default we can have false value with it, and we can have message key, and we can have no empty message field over here. Now this is another error state variable. What we can do over here is, if some validation fails, for example, if the user is not provided the full name, or maybe in the full name they're using some number and you don't want the user to be able to use numbers over here. So you can have the validation over here, update the value of the error message, and create a div element over here to show error message, which will only be rendered when this show property of error message will be true. So this is a homework for you guys, try this out, or, when we will move on to some other simple project. So then we will cover this style as well. So for now, let's not confuse ourselves. So we are able to, capture all the input fields. We are able to set it to the state variable, which is the form fields. Now, if you want to, enable this submit button click and submit handling also, so you can simply do this on submit, and let's have a handle form function. Now this will be very easy because we have already set all the values in the, object over here. So we can simply use this, right? Let's see how we can do that. I'll have event over here. Now, one thing that you will have to do is prevent the default propagation of the form. So we can do this event.prevent default, and this stops the normal default propagation of the form. And here, if you simply log the value of this state variable, you will find the entire form fields set. Because, we have already set the state variable when this all these fields changes. So let's see, Abhishek, let's provide an email, mail. If I click on submit, I'm getting the complete object already set. You can also convert this into a JSON to sending it to the backend. So we can use the JSON object and stringify function over here. And if you save it, and if I click on submit over here, I'll get the JSON string with key value pairs. And that is something that you can send to your backend, do some processing or whatever you want to do with the form field. So that was about it. In this particular video, what we did was, we have not directly handled the onSubmit form event. We have rather gone with the input onChange approach, where we have added onChange event handlers for all the input fields for the form, and individually handle them using a single form, and also have a form field state in which we have a basic object associated with each of the input field created with properties right over here, and we are filling in values for each of the input field as the value changes. And in the handle form onSubmit event, we are simply using this form field state variable. So this is the second way in which you can handle forms. So I wanted to cover both of these approaches. The first one is a direct approach, where you simply handle the onSubmit event of the form, And the second one is more, broken down into pieces where you have creating different event handlers for each of the fields, handling each of the fields values separately, doing validation or whatever you want to do with them, and then combining them together in an object and setting it to the state. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're following this React series from the beginning, please do share in the comment section below if you're liking it or if there's something that I can improve. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you get notified whenever I post a new video. Thank you for watching this video. Keep learning and keep visiting us back on our YouTube channel. See you again.